My ex texted, "I've taken our son. Don't try to find us. All communication through my lawyer." I replied, "Understood." Then I immediately filed an emergency custody order and alerted the authorities with proof of her instability. 72 hours later, her lawyer was begging to negotiate. It was almost 10 p.m. when I finally stepped out of the briefing room. My head throbbed from hours of tension, half the team still buzzing from the chaos of the Chicago tarmac debacle. Delays, reroutes, an emergency fuel inspection, and I was the lucky one stuck explaining it all to corporate. I barely remembered what I said during that final debrief, only that I didn't sit once and my coffee went cold hours ago. As I walked down the dark corridor toward the exit, my phone buzzed. A text from Dana. I hadn't seen her name on my screen in weeks. We'd barely spoken outside of our shared parenting app and legal filters. She was like a ghost that occasionally haunted my inbox, always dramatic, never predictable. But this message stopped me in my tracks. "I have Eli. We're not coming back. All contact must go through my attorney. Do not try to reach me directly." For a second, my brain just shut off. I stood there, staring at the screen like maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something else, something less insane. Then a sharp, involuntary breath. My thumb hovered. I typed, "Understood," and hit send. That was it. Just one word. The coldest word I could think of. Anything more, and I'd lose control. I stood still for a beat. Then I moved. Fast. Down the stairs, into the car, phone already dialing. Mr. Bennett picked up on the second ring. "Mark." "She took him," I said, voice clipped. "Just now." Sent a text. "Says all contact goes through her attorney." There was a pause, then the sound of shuffling papers. "You documented everything?" "You know I have," I replied. "It's time." "All right," Bennett said, calm and steady. "I'll initiate the emergency motion. Send me the screenshot and prepare the full file. I'll draft tonight." Next, I pulled into my driveway, barely remembering the ride home. The porch light was still on. Eli's toys were still on the front lawn. But my son wasn't here, and the air felt wrong, hollow. Inside, I opened the secured file I'd kept updated for months. Every erratic message Dana had sent. The voicemail from last month where she accused our 5-year-old of conspiring against her. The therapist's note she dismissed but never formally revoked. Screenshots. Bank alerts. Her, "I'm moving to Costa Rica with him" Facebook rant from February. I packaged it all. Then called the local PD, calm, direct, professional. I explained the situation. Her instability. The legal agreements in place. I had everything ready before the officer even asked. As I emailed the package to the detective, I paused just briefly and looked around the living room. Eli's hoodie was on the couch. His coloring book, the one with the dinosaurs, was still open on the coffee table, half-colored. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I gripped the edge of the table. My vision blurred. But I didn't fall apart. Not yet. Instead, I whispered, "Hang on, buddy. I'm coming." Then I stood up and got back to work. The next morning felt like waking up inside someone else's life. I hadn't slept. Not really. I laid in bed for maybe 2 hours, just staring at the ceiling with one hand on my phone, waiting for a call from the police, a reply from Bennett, anything that would give me a sign my son was okay. But the phone stayed quiet. At 6:30 a.m., I gave up pretending and got dressed. I walked into Eli's room. It was exactly the same as he left it, blankets tangled from the night before, his stuffed tiger half hanging off the bed, the little drawing he made last week still taped to the closet door. I stared at it for a while, 2 stick figures holding hands, one big, one small, with "Me and Daddy" written in crooked purple crayon underneath. I swallowed hard and walked out. By 8:15, I was in Mr. Bennett's office downtown. His assistant led me in without a word. Bennett was already seated at his desk, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, the manila folder I'd sent him spread across his desk like a war map. "You did well gathering all this," he said, motioning toward the stack of printed screenshots, audio transcripts, and the psychologist's early report Dana had bailed on. This will help." I just nodded. Words didn't come easy right now. He pushed a form toward me. "We're filing for emergency custody under Section 502 of the Family Code. Based on prior documentation, her instability, the sudden removal of Eli, and her refusal to comply with court-mandated contact protocols, we have grounds." "It's strong, Mark." I signed where he told me to, each stroke of the pen more forceful than the last. Then I left his office and drove straight to the Child Protection Unit. The front desk officer didn't blink when I said I had a custody emergency. She'd probably seen this too many times. An hour later, I sat across from Officer Delaney, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a clipboard that never left her lap. She listened, actually listened, as I laid it all out. "She's not violent," I said. "But she's unstable. She cycles through emotions in seconds. Eli told me last month she screamed at the mailman because she thought he was recording her. I'm not making this up." Delaney took notes silently, just nodding every few seconds. And the therapist? She asked. She only saw her once, I replied. But the report she wrote, even based on that single session, was damning. Dana refused to return. Said she didn't trust the agenda. Delaney didn't say much more, but something shifted in her face, the kind of look that meant she believed me, or at least took it seriously. When I got home, it was dead quiet. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. I walked through the living room, past the couch where Eli used to curl up with his cartoons. His toy truck was still on the floor, where he'd left it 3 days ago. I stepped around it, then stopped and bent down, brushing my fingers across its dusty plastic roof. He used to drive that thing in circles while humming to himself. Now it was just a reminder. I sat on the edge of the couch, head in my hands, and for the first time since the text, I let myself fall apart. Just for a minute. Then I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and opened my laptop. There was still more to do. 3 days. That's how long it had been since the text. Since she vanished with Eli. I hadn't eaten a real meal. I hadn't slept longer than 30 minutes at a time. I lived on coffee, adrenaline, and constant updates from the police and Bennett. My phone never left my hand. Even in the shower, it sat on the counter, screen facing me, volume all the way up. It finally happened on the 3rd morning. I was pouring my 3rd cup of coffee when the call came. Unknown number. I answered on the first ring. Mr. Collins? This is Officer Delaney. We found her. I gripped the counter. Where? A small coastal inn in Southport. 300 miles away. She checked in under her maiden name 2 days ago. Your son is with her. I didn't realize I'd stopped breathing until I heard her say, he's okay. A little confused, a little shaken, but no injuries. Officers on scene say he seemed relieved to see uniforms. My knees almost gave out. I closed my eyes and let out a long, shuddering breath. And Dana? She's not well, Delaney said carefully. Agitated, rambling. Won't answer direct questions. We're working on a transfer to a holding facility, but we need the judge's green light for next steps. For now, she's being held for observation. Do I get to speak to him? I asked. Not yet. Soon. I thanked her. I honestly don't remember hanging up. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number, the law office of Dana's new attorney. Mr. Collins? It was a woman's voice. Smooth, urgent. This is Leanne Hartwell. I represent Dana Collins. I'm calling to discuss a possible mediated resolution to avoid further. No, I said. There was a pause. Excuse me. There is no resolution until my son is home. Safe. And Dana completes a psychiatric evaluation. No exceptions. She tried to backpedal, but I cut her off. I'm not negotiating. Not while my kid's still hundreds of miles away and terrified. Another pause. Then, quietly, you should know Dana's very upset. She didn't mean harm. She abducted our son, I said, my voice flat. She disappeared without warning and broke a custody agreement. You don't get to frame that as a misunderstanding. Hartwell's tone shifted, less confident now. We just think. I don't care what you think, I snapped. Call me when Dana's checked into a facility and Eli's back under my roof. Until then, talk to Bennett. I ended the call and tossed my phone onto the couch. My hands were shaking. The relief should have been overwhelming. They found him. He was safe. But instead, all I felt was fury. She'd taken him from everything familiar. Drove him across the state. Checked into a no-name inn like they were on vacation. All while spiraling. I stared at the family photo on the shelf, Eli, grinning wide, his arms wrapped around my neck. I whispered, hang tight, kiddo. I didn't know exactly when I'd hold him again. But now I knew where he was. And that meant we were close. The car ride back from Southport was the quietest trip of my life. Eli sat in the back, buckled in tight, arms wrapped around his stuffed dinosaur. He didn't cry. He didn't talk much either. Just looked out the window like the world didn't make sense anymore. And honestly, I couldn't blame him. The officer who'd handed him off to me, a kind woman named Jacobs, had crouched down and told him gently, "You're going home with Daddy now, okay?" He'd nodded, slow and cautious, like he wasn't quite sure if it was real. The first 10 minutes of the drive, he said nothing. Then, in the softest voice, he asked, "Is Mommy sick?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "She's not feeling her best," I said carefully. "But some really smart doctors are going to help her." Eli looked down at the dinosaur in his lap and nodded. She yelled at the man at the desk. He looked scared. I swallowed hard. "That wasn't okay, buddy. But it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong." He looked out the window again. "Mom said we were going to live by the ocean forever. But there was no toys. Just loud TV all the time." I didn't know what to say to that. So I just reached back at the next red light and placed my hand on his knee. He put his little hand on top of mine. When we finally got home, he didn't run through the door like he usually did. He stepped in slowly, like it was all unfamiliar now. But then he saw it. His drawing on the fridge. The toy truck still sitting in the corner of the living room. The half-eaten bag of animal crackers I hadn't moved from the coffee table. He walked in, placed his dinosaur on the couch, and curled up next to it without a word. I sat beside him. "You're safe here, Eli," I said. "No one's taking you anywhere again. I promise." He nodded, eyes wide and quiet. The next morning, Dana's sister April called. Then she texted. Then she called again. "This is cruel, Mark. You know Dana's not well. You're punishing her when she needs help. You always wanted her out of the way. Admit it. Eli needs his mother. You're manipulating him." I blocked the number after the fourth message. By noon, 2 more calls came from numbers I didn't recognize. I blocked them too. Then came a voicemail from Dana's mom. Half whispers, half accusations. Something about keeping family together, and how dare you take advantage while she's fragile. I deleted it without listening to the end. I looked over at Eli, who was building a Lego tower in his pajamas, humming to himself. Let them rage. Let them send voicemails and thinly veiled threats. My focus was here, on this moment, on the soft sound of Eli being a kid again. I wasn't wasting 1 second on anyone who couldn't put him first. The courtroom smelled like old wood and bad coffee. I sat at the petitioner's table in a suit that suddenly felt too tight, my hands folded in front of me like they were glued together. Mr. Bennett sat beside me, flipping calmly through our file like it was just another Thursday. But this wasn't just another Thursday. This was the emergency custody hearing, the first real chance to show the court exactly what Dana had done. Dana walked in 10 minutes late, her hair messy and pulled into a too-tight bun, like she'd thrown herself together in the car. She looked pale, tired, but not the tired you get from being a parent. This was the kind of tired that came from chaos. Her lawyer, Leon Hartwell, walked in right behind her. She looked polished and nervous. Dana didn't look at me. She just sat down and stared at the floor. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with half-moon glasses and the kind of expression that could freeze fire. She got right to it. "Mr. Bennett, begin." Bennett stood and calmly laid out the evidence. "The child's mother removed him from the father's care without consent or notice," he said, pointing to the paperwork, driving across state lines and checking into a hotel under an alias. "This occurred while she was in violation of an existing custody agreement. We've submitted transcripts of erratic voicemails, a psychologist referral note, financial instability, and verified testimony from officers at the scene of recovery." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The facts were louder than anything. Hartwell stood next. "Your Honor," she said, voice carefully measured, "Mrs. Collins has been under extreme emotional distress. She made a mistake, but it was not malicious. She simply wanted time to reconnect with her child after a difficult period. She regrets how it was handled." The judge raised an eyebrow. "She disappeared with the child, refused communication, and broke court orders," the judge said flatly. "Do you have documentation of her psychological condition, any diagnosis that could explain her behavior?" Hartwell cleared her throat. "She's in the process of arranging a full evaluation." "Process," the judge echoed, clearly unimpressed. Dana finally spoke, her voice a whisper that cracked into a shout by the second sentence. "I just needed a break from everything. He's turning Eli against me. I'm not crazy." The judge held up a hand. "Ms. Collins, please don't speak unless prompted." Dana started to cry, then laugh, then cry again. The judge waited, then calmly read from her notes. "Emergency custody remains with Mr. Collins. Ms. Collins is granted supervised visitation, contingent on immediate and full psychiatric evaluation. Compliance is mandatory for any further hearings." That was it. Bang of the gavel. Dana slumped forward in her chair. As I stood to leave, I caught one last look at her, not as the woman I married, but as a stranger unraveling in real time. I didn't feel victory. Not really. But I did feel one thing. Validation. They saw what I had seen all along. And more importantly, they believed me. The ink on the court order hadn't even dried before the backlash started. It began with a cryptic Facebook post from Dana's mother, Evelyn. A blurry photo of Eli from last summer with a caption that read, "Some people think courts decide what's right, but a child's heart knows the truth. #parental alienation, #family first." It didn't take long for mutual friends and distant cousins to start liking, sharing, and commenting vague little hearts and "Stay strong, Mama" messages. None of them had reached out to me. Not one had asked what really happened. That same afternoon, I got a call from Eli's daycare. The director sounded shaken. "Mr. Collins, a woman came by today. Said she was picking up Eli. Gave us Dana's last name. Said she was his aunt." My stomach dropped. What happened? She didn't get far. Our policy held. But it rattled everyone. It wasn't her day, and she wasn't on the pickup list. "Was it April?" I asked. "Yes," the director said. "Short brown hair. Said you gave her permission." I didn't. I drove straight there and filed a formal trespass warning. April had crossed a line, a serious one. 2 days later, I found out someone had filed an anonymous complaint with HR at my job. I work in airline ops, structure, precision, and reputation matter. The complaint accused me of abusive outbursts, emotional instability, and creating an unsafe work environment. The HR rep who called me in was professional, but I could tell she was uncomfortable. "Mark, we're required to follow up. You understand. These accusations came through our integrity hotline." "I've been here 12 years, I said. "There's no record of anything like that. Ever." She nodded. "That's why we're not taking action. Just documenting the incident. But if anything further comes up—" "I get it," I said, jaw tight. "Thanks for letting me know." I walked out of that meeting feeling dirty, like someone had thrown a bucket of mud at me in broad daylight. And they weren't done yet. That weekend, a cop knocked on my door. I opened it, Eli standing just behind me in his pajamas. "Mr. Collins," the officer said, "we received a tip about possible neglect." I blinked. "Neglect?" He looked awkward. "A report said your son might be left alone frequently, unsupervised. We're obligated to check." I invited him in. 10 minutes later, he apologized and left. There was nothing to find. Eli's room was clean, his schoolwork was posted on the fridge, and I had a week's worth of groceries on the counter. But the damage had already been done. I stood at the door after the officer left, staring at the empty street. I couldn't prove Dana or her family made the call, but I didn't need to. Who else would? That night, I added it all to the folder: the fake HR complaint, the social media posts, the daycare ambush, the wellness check. I labeled and dated every incident. I scanned copies and uploaded them to our shared drive with Bennett. The legal fight wasn't over. It had just changed shape. No longer just custody. This was character assassination. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. But they underestimated me. They thought I'd panic, hide, lose control. Instead, I documented. I archived. I prepared. Because if they wanted to play dirty, I'd be ready. I wasn't backing down. Not while Eli was still sleeping safe in the next room. Not while he still needed me. Not while he still called me Dad. The first supervised visit happened on a Tuesday afternoon in a sterile little room at the County Child Services building. Eli clung to me when the caseworker came to get him. His arms wrapped around my leg like he thought they'd take him and not bring him back. "I'll be right here when you're done," I said, kneeling down. "It's just a visit. You'll be safe." He nodded, blinking fast. Then he took the woman's hand and disappeared around the corner. I waited in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel like it was keeping me anchored to the planet. 45 minutes later, he came out with the same caseworker. She smiled gently. Eli didn't. In the car, he didn't say much. Just stared out the window and finally whispered, "Mom said you told the judge lies." I kept my voice calm. "That's not true. I told the truth, because I love you. And I always will." He nodded slowly. "She cried the whole time. It took everything in me not to grit my teeth." Dana used those supervised visits like little theater performances. According to the reports, which I read word for word, she spent the majority of her time playing the victim. Talking to Eli about how sad she was, how confused, how everything was Daddy's fault. One visit, she brought him a photo album. All pictures of the three of us, from years ago, before everything cracked. Eli told me later, "She said you made her disappear from our family." I didn't tell him that Dana had chosen to disappear long before she packed a bag and fled to Southport. Meanwhile, her psychological evaluation, the one the judge required, kept getting postponed. Hartwell filed one excuse after another. "She's not stable enough right now. She's starting a new medication. She needs a specialist." We'd go to court every few weeks just to be told there was another delay. Mr. Bennett filed motions to enforce compliance. Each time, the judge gave Dana another chance. "She needs to cooperate," the judge said during one hearing. "But the court will not escalate consequences without offering support." Support. That word sat like a stone in my stomach. I was the one supporting Eli every day. The school drop-offs, the nightmares, the therapy sessions. But no one gave me extensions. Still, slowly, Eli began to heal. He started sleeping through the night again. The circles under his eyes faded. He smiled more. Laughed, even. One evening, while we were watching a movie, he leaned against me and whispered, "I like our house better." "Why?" I asked, brushing his hair back. "It's quieter. And you don't cry all the time." I blinked fast and pulled him close. Then the next morning, Bennett called. "Dana's lawyer submitted a motion," he said, his voice edged with disbelief. "They're asking for temporary spousal support and reimbursement of legal fees." I nearly dropped my coffee. "What?" "I'm filing our response right now. Don't worry, it's not happening." I laughed once. A dry, bitter sound. They could stall all they wanted. Try every tactic in the book. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was building a case. And every ugly little move they made was another brick in the wall that would keep Eli safe. 6 months. That's how long it had been since Dana took Eli. 6 months of court filings, supervised visits, manipulated conversations, and a psychological evaluation that still hadn't happened. 6 months of proving, documenting, and holding my breath every time my phone rang. Now it came down to this. The final hearing. I sat in that courtroom in the same suit I wore for the emergency hearing, the same tie Eli picked out when we'd gone shopping weeks earlier. "This one makes you look like a boss," he'd said. I smiled every time I tied it. Across the aisle, Dana sat with her arms crossed and jaw tight. Her eyes were glassy, and her foot bounced under the table nonstop. Hartwell sat beside her, flipping through a stack of papers, clearly rattled. She knew what was coming. The judge opened with a simple question. "Ms. Hartwell, has your client completed the court-ordered psychiatric evaluation?" Hartwell cleared her throat. "Your Honor, there have been scheduling complications. We've requested another." "No," the judge interrupted, voice firm. "This evaluation was ordered 4 months ago. The deadline has passed. Proceed." Mr. Bennett stood. "Your Honor, we submit our final report, chronological documentation of abduction, repeated court order violations, attempts at interference with the father's career, and multiple confirmed false reports submitted to authorities, all of which were timed around court appearances or supervised visits." He paused, flipping to a thick section of the binder. "We also submit a guardian ad litem report, which includes teacher statements, therapy logs, and direct observations. Every line supports our position. Mr. Collins has provided a stable, child-centered home throughout. Meanwhile, Ms. Collins has demonstrated behavior marked by emotional volatility, noncompliance, and manipulative conduct." He stepped back. The judge took her time reading. You could have heard a pin drop. Then the guardian took the stand. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and the firm tone of someone who'd seen too much. She didn't waste time. I spent considerable hours with both parties. I observed multiple visits. In each, Mr. Collins focused on Eli's comfort, understanding, and routine. Ms. Collins, on the other hand, used visits to discuss court matters, express frustration, and pressure the child emotionally. She turned to the judge. "I recommend full custody to Mr. Collins, with strictly supervised, bi-monthly visitation from Ms. Collins, contingent on her completing treatment and demonstrating consistent progress." Dana's mouth dropped open. "This is insane," she yelled, standing up. "This is a setup." He paid her off. "Ms. Collins, sit down," the judge ordered. Dana turned on Hartwell. "Do something." Hartwell looked mortified. "Dana." "No, I won't let this happen." She spun toward me then, eyes blazing. "You lied. You made me look crazy. You took him from me." I didn't flinch. I just looked at her, quiet. The judge banged her gavel. "Enough." Silence. Then, calmly, the judge read her verdict. Permanent custody awarded to the petitioner, Mr. Mark Collins. Visitation for Ms. Dana Collins is to be supervised and conditional upon completion of a psychiatric treatment plan. Court is adjourned. It was over. Just like that. Dana sank into her seat, still muttering, still shaking. Hartwell didn't say a word. She just gathered her papers with shaking hands. I stood up slowly. Bennett put a hand on my shoulder, just for a second. "You did it," he said. But I didn't feel triumphant. Just tired. As I walked out of that courtroom, I knew 2 things. 1, Eli was safe. And 2, whatever part of me still wanted Dana to be the person she used to be, was finally gone. The house was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't the kind of quiet that haunted me. It was peace. Eli was upstairs building a Lego city on his bedroom floor, narrating to himself like it was a movie. The final hearing had been 2 weeks ago, but the shift in him was already clear. He laughed more. He slept through the night. He even started asking if he could invite a friend over, something he hadn't done in months. That morning, I got the official letter in the mail. Full legal custody awarded to Mark Collins. Supervised visits for Dana. Bi-monthly. Contingent on psychiatric treatment. No more games. No more surprise calls from attorneys. No more last-minute accusations from relatives who hadn't seen Eli in years. I still got voicemails, mostly from Evelyn, Dana's mom. "Mark, you've made your point. You win, okay? But keeping a child from his mother, you're not going to feel good about that forever." Then a day later. "This is wrong. You know it. She's getting better. Just let her talk to him." And then finally, "Please call me back. For Dana's sake. For Eli's." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I blocked the number. It wasn't about punishment. It was about boundaries. Something I should have done years ago. News of the custody ruling didn't stay private for long. The Guardian's report had somehow leaked. Maybe Hartwell dropped the ball. Maybe someone at the court talked. Either way, the public tide turned quick. Suddenly, the same Facebook friends who were posting #FamilyFirst now went silent. A few even deleted old comments. April vanished from Eli's daycare pickup line. Evelyn stopped posting photos. And Dana? According to Bennett, she'd moved in with a cousin outside of town. Rumor was she'd applied to 3 jobs and didn't get a call back from any. She'd built her house on sympathy. But when the truth came out, the foundation crumbled. One night, I found Eli asleep on the couch, curled up under the blanket with his stuffed dinosaur. A cartoon was still playing quietly on the screen. I sat next to him, brushed the hair off his forehead. He stirred a little, blinked up at me. Hey, Daddy? Yeah, buddy? You're not gonna leave, right? My chest tightened. No, never. He nodded, already drifting back to sleep. Okay, just making sure. I stayed there a while, listening to him breathe. I thought about everything we'd been through, the courtroom battles, the late-night calls, the nights I cried in the garage just to keep it from him. And I thought about everything still ahead. Therapy appointments, school projects, bad dreams, hard questions. But I also thought about movie nights, soccer games, hand-drawn birthday cards, quiet mornings with pancakes and Eli humming to himself while the Lego guys did backflips off the kitchen table. I didn't get everything back. Too much had happened. But I got the one thing that mattered. My son. And now we could finally begin the work of healing, not in court, not in lawyers' offices, but here, at home, together, where he was safe, where he belonged.